No, God makes it clear in Deuteronomy in the first 5 chapters that it was nothing. It's just that he chose to set his love upon them. It was his hesed, his steadfast love, his mercy, his grace. That's what hesed, it actually encapsulated all those words, his grace. And Israel saw that in response to God's grace, that they were required to love, serve, and obey him. Turning quickly to Ephesians 2, it makes a whole lot of sense that this is what even the Apostle Paul held it. And I don't believe Paul came up with this. This was something that he held. Of course, the many Pharisees were kind of distorting this truth. But I don't think Judaism as a whole ever taught a salvation by works. Read this Ephesians 2, verse number 8. For by grace you are saved through faith, and that not of yourselves. It is the gift of God, not of works, lest any man should boast. Most of us stop right there, but we got to read the next verse. Verse 10, for we are his workmanship, created in Christ Jesus unto good works, which God hath before ordained that we shall walk in them. So we're saved by faith, not of works, but then he requires you, now that you are saved, you're to walk in faithfulness, to do good works, to do good, to serve him, to obey him, do good works. So it's not what saves us, but it's what follows our salvation. This way Israel saw it. God had saved them by the grace, and now they're to keep his covenant. I don't see anything different under a new covenant concerning that. But what I really wanted to deal with was a few points in dispensationalism that really doesn't make a whole lot of sense in this argument. One is, every dispensation has a law or a plan of salvation, and that each one also ends in judgment. And what I found quite confusing, from what I understand, the Schofield understanding of dispensation was that the dispensation of promise ended in judgment by Israel going into Egyptian bondage. And it said, or I was taught, that they went into bondage because they disobeyed the Lord, that the Lord told them not to stay down in Egypt. And when I go through my reading of Genesis, I never found that verse. Never found it once where the Lord said, don't stay down there, don't go down there. If you go down there, don't stay. I never found it. So I wonder who came up with that, and why. What does that have to do with it? Why were they in bondage? I thought it was already prophesied that it was just going to happen, not that it was any fault of their own. I never read that verse anywhere. The other thing I have a problem is that we teach primarily through Luther's perspective, Martin Luther's perspective. And Martin Luther has a great truth, but he was in a medieval Roman Catholic church that was rife with works righteousness, and he read Paul's epistles in light of that, his experience. And so he portrayed his experience in the Catholic Church upon Judaism, saying that Judaism also taught a works salvation. I find that highly unlikely, because even the Pharisee himself, Paul, says, no man is justified by works in the sight of God. That means Moses, that means Joshua, that means David. Nobody is justified by works. David says he knew the blessedness of being imputed righteousness without works. I believe they understood this. And that was the whole typology of the sacrificial system for them, knowing that they had sinned and God was granting them grace, pardon for their sins, showing that through the sacrificial system, which all points to Yeshua, Jesus, points to his ultimate sacrifice, which the book of Hebrews deals about. I don't want to get into the book of Hebrews right now. I could do like a half hour, 45-minute teaching on that, dealing with what the book of Hebrews is talking about. It mainly focuses on the Aaronic priesthood, contrasting it with the Melchizedek priesthood of Christ. And it deals with the sacrificial system. There are words that are inserted by the translators that are italicized in Hebrew that kind of obscured chapters 8 and 9. That gets the focus off what the author is really talking about, which is the temple sacrificial system and the priesthood. And he brings in this new covenant to show how this new covenant can only be administered not by an old priesthood but by a new priesthood. But I can't deal with that right now. What I wanted to do is I bought this Bible when I lived in Mississippi about 4 to 5 years ago. This is the Master Study Bible. It's a King James version, and it's published by Cornerstone Bible Publishers. But it has encyclopedia notes in it, and I was astonished to find this in the encyclopedia notes in the back. Under dispensation, I'm going to read this for you.